Welcome to Reclaiming Me, a trauma-informed podcast helping women with complex PTSD heal the lasting impact of childhood attachment wounds from parents and caregivers, so you can finally release people-pleasing and perfectionism and learn to trust in relationships, beginning with the one you have with yourself. I'm your host, Cindy Payne, therapist, trauma specialist, and a woman who has walked this path both personally and professionally.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is the Midweek Reframe. If you are new here to the Reclaiming Me podcast, I do a shorter episode that I drop every week in the middle of the week to give you something to sit with and reflect on, or maybe just carry into the rest of your days for the week. So if you haven't listened to this week's full-length episode with my guest, Rudy Betzold, I really encourage you to go back and do that first. It's episode 122. We went deep on why so many people struggle to stick with therapy, what's actually happening when we pull away in therapy, and what it looks like to stay in the process even when it's hard. Especially if you are living with CPTSD, I think that this episode will land for you. I have only done one other episode on therapy as it relates to CPTSD, and I wanted to have another licensed professional counselor on the show to get her perspective. And it was just such a fun way to connect with a fellow podcaster and a fellow therapist. So this midweek reframe today is a direct follow-up to that conversation, because one of the things that Rudy and I kept coming back to in that conversation is that the work doesn't just happen in the therapy room. The work happens out here in the ordinary moments of your week. And that got me thinking about this question. Where did I apply a lesson from therapy this week? Not did I have a breakthrough, not am I fixed yet, not did I do everything right. Rather, just where did something show up for me? Where did I catch myself? Where did the work actually land? And so if you are not in therapy right now, that is totally fine. You would still be able to get something out of this conversation, because many of us read self-help books, we listen to podcasts, we have conversations with friends who might feel like our therapist, and this all counts. But here's the thing about traditional therapy. We tend to measure traditional therapy by our experience in the room. So did I cry? Did I get to the hard thing? Did my therapist say something that cracked me wide open? And those moments matter. They really do. But they're not actually where the healing happens. The healing happens on a Tuesday afternoon when someone says something that normally would have sent you into a spiral. And instead, you notice it and you pause and you feel it without becoming it. Or it happens when you're about to say yes to something that maybe you don't have the capacity for. And this tiny voice goes, wait, this isn't actually what I want. Or it happens when you're in a conversation and you catch yourself going quiet in the old way, the way that maybe used to mean I'll just disappear until this is over. And instead, you stay, even just a little more than before. That's the work. That is what sticking with therapy actually builds. Not this perfect, healed version of yourself. I like to describe it as just a slightly more awake version, a version that catches things a little sooner. So this week, I invite you to sit with the question, and I mean really sit with it, not just scroll past it. Where did I apply a lesson from therapy this week? And maybe your answer will be really obvious. Maybe you set a boundary and it felt terrifying and you did it anyway. Or maybe you named a feeling out loud instead of swallowing it. But maybe it's quieter than that. Maybe you didn't catastrophize something that you normally would have. Maybe you asked for help. Maybe you just noticed, oh, there's that pattern again, and you did not shame yourself for it. And for those of you living with CPTSD especially, I want to name that your wins are often invisible to everybody around you because nobody sees the internal negotiation that happened before you walked into that room. Nobody sees that you stayed regulated when everything in your nervous system wanted to flee. Nobody sees that you trusted someone even a little when trusting people has historically cost you something. But those moments are real and they count and they are the lesson landing. And I want to share just a brief example of where did I apply a lesson from therapy this week in my own life. And so I'll just give you the really quick version that I have been working on understanding my relationship to resentment and boundaries and how those go together hand in hand. Resentment is not an emotion that I have particularly felt kind towards or welcoming towards. I was raised to stray from resentment, to not get up close to it because it's not a becoming emotion. It's not an acceptable or pleasant emotion. So in my healing work, whenever I'm feeling resentful, rather than take that as something that I need to repel against or turn away from, my work has been to turn towards it in a loving way and a curious way and ask resentment what it needs to tell me. And it's typically that there's a boundary that I have not communicated to someone around me. So, as I've shared on here before, as a CPTSD survivor, I have this tendency to overfunction and to become the orchestrator, the planner, the communicator for everybody in my family. And I don't even realize I'm doing it half the time. And it's coming from a place of love. But then when it doesn't get reciprocated, I get really resentful. And I can go into this really unbecoming, self-righteous version of myself that I don't want to be because it does not build connection. Rather, it threatens the connection. So my work, again, has been to recognize the resentful feeling and then question myself, where do I need to set a boundary and how do I want to communicate that boundary in a way that leaves me feeling soft and open to still be in connection with those that I love. So we are going in 100 different directions. I've got 2 boys who are about to start college in the fall for the first time ever. I have another child who is about to head off to another country to study abroad. He's never done that before. So I do what I normally do, which is to jump into planning mode and I start sending emails and making arrangements for things without even consulting the emerging adults in our family. And then when they get annoyed with that, they're trying to communicate that I've maybe overstepped my role, then I get frustrated and it doesn't always go well. And so my therapist and I have been kind of working through ways that I can notice when I am doing this and I can pull back with curiosity and with tenderness and ask myself, what is it that I am trying to calm inside of me? And where do I need to protect my own peace so that other people can stay in connection with me in a loving way? And we don't have to sacrifice the integrity of the relationship. So that's where I'm applying my therapy. And if you are in your own therapy right now, I want to offer you again that practical question of what is one thing that I want to take out of the room with me at the end of my session or even at the end of your week. It's not a homework assignment. It's not a thing to fix. It's just one thing. It's a phrase that your therapist said. It's a moment where something shifted. It's a reframe that you want to keep practicing. And then this is the part that people skip oftentimes. Look for it. Actually look for where it shows up in your regular life. So in the hard conversation with your partner, or in the moment your body tenses before a meeting, in the way you talk to yourself when you make a mistake. Because here's what I've come to believe. Therapy doesn't work because of what happens in the room. It works because of what you do with it in between sessions. The room is just the container where you get the insight. So life is where you practice this. And for those of you who've tried therapy before and it didn't stick, I wonder if part of what was missing was this bridge. So that translation of this is interesting in here into this is actually changing something out there. And that bridge is something that you can build. It doesn't require a perfect therapist or a perfect session or even a perfect week. It just requires just a little bit of curiosity and a willingness to look for the lesson that's showing up. So this week, again, wherever you are in your process, whether you are actively in therapy or just therapy curious or somewhere in between, sit with the question of where did you apply a lesson this week? Write it down if that's your thing. Say it out loud. Text it to a friend who gets it, or just let it be a quiet thing that you notice before you fall asleep at night. And if your honest answer is, I don't know, or nowhere, that's okay too, because that's just information. So maybe it's a week to bring that into the room. Maybe it's a week to be gentler with yourself about what the work actually looks like. Either way, you're here and you're thinking about it, and that already matters. So before I go, I want to switch gears and I want to tell you about something that I'm working on for later this summer. I am planning a Ask Me Anything episode, perhaps a 2-part episode if I get a lot of inquiries. And I want to just focus it specifically on CPTSD. So if you have questions about what CPTSD actually is, how it shows up in your relationships or your body, what healing can look like, or what therapy for CPTSD is actually like, or just anything else you've been sitting with and you haven't known who to ask, I want to hear from you. I have already started to receive some emails and some DMs in my Instagram regarding some of the episodes. And so I love that. And I want to address that. I promise that I read every question, every email, every inquiry, and I want to give back some information on that. So you can reach me by email or you can DM me on Instagram. And both of those resources are in the show notes. And one disclaimer, I will only speak to what I'm comfortable sharing in a way that feels useful for healing. But I do mean it when I say that I want this to be for you. The questions that you're maybe a little afraid to ask out loud, the ones that have been quietly living in the back of your mind, send them my way. And I'll be collecting them through the summer, and I can't wait to sit down with them. Okay, that's it for this week. So go back and listen to the full conversation with Rudy if you haven't yet. And I will see you in the next episode. Take good care.
Thank you for spending this time with me today. I hope you leave feeling a little lighter, a little more grounded, and a little closer to trusting yourself and your inner experience. If this episode resonated with you, please follow or subscribe so future conversations can meet you when they're needed. And if someone came to mind while you were listening, consider sharing this episode with them. That's one of the ways this work reaches the people who need it the most. You can find me on Instagram at Cindy Payne Rooted, and you can also visit me at cindypayne.com, where you'll find all episode links, blog posts, practice updates, and a free people-pleasing style quiz designed to help you notice your patterns with more compassion. And remember, every small step towards healing, self-trust, and presence matters. You are worthy of this journey. Thanks, everyone.